Have you ever felt like your mind is racing 1,000 miles an hour and there's no way to stop it? Like a monkey in the jungle, jumping from branch to branch, impossible to catch. Each branch is a new worry, a fear, a painful memory. It's exhausting. Everything spinning non-stop. You can't focus, you can't relax, you can't live in peace. Breathe. Pause for a second. It's time to silence the noise. Today I'll show you how to find inner peace again. And no, it won't depend on what's happening around you. True tranquility doesn't come from controlling every little detail of life. It's not about getting stuck in traffic and running late, or about your neighbor giving you a weird look in the elevator. It's about mastering the only thing that's truly in your hands, your mind. The Stoics knew this well. You can't stop life from throwing challenges your way, but you can decide how to face them. Today, you'll learn how to calm that restless monkey inside you, the one that just wants to jump from problem to problem. Because you know what? If you don't learn to control your mind, it will become your worst enemy. And that, my friend, ends today. Are you ready to take back your peace? Let's go. But first, let me tell you a story that perfectly illustrates why mental calmness isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. This is the story of Gaspar, a young surgeon working at one of the most prestigious hospitals in the world. With only a few years of experience, he had already become the brightest among the junior residents. His colleagues admired his precision. His supervisors saw him as a rising star, and to the world, he had a brilliant future ahead. But inside his mind, well, that was a different story. The weight of responsibility was crushing him. Every patient felt like a potential disaster. Every surgery put him on a tightrope between life and death. He couldn't afford to fail, and that fear consumed him. At night, he couldn't sleep. He would replay every operation, questioning every decision. What if he had reacted too slowly? What if in the next surgery, he made an irreversible mistake? One day, after an exhausting surgery, Gaspar walked out of the operating room feeling nauseous. The procedure had been a success, but his mind was completely drained. As he walked through the halls, he noticed an older surgeon with gray hair, staring at the sky through the hospital window. It was Dr. Estrada, a legend in his field. At 70 years old, he was still operating with an enviable technique, as if time and pressure had never affected him. Gaspar approached him, and almost without thinking asked, "Doctor, how do you do it? How do you stay calm before an important surgery? I try to relax, but my mind just keeps racing." Dr. Estrada smiled calmly and motioned for him to sit down. "When I was young," he said, "I thought the key was to anticipate every possible mistake, to make sure nothing slipped out of my hands. But over the years, I realized that control is just an illusion. You can't stop life from happening. You can only choose how to respond to it." Gaspar listened intently, but his mind was still full of doubts. "And how do you control your mind when fear takes over?" he insisted. "How do you stop anxiety from paralyzing you before a difficult operation? How do you sleep at night after making a mistake?" Dr. Estrada took a deep breath before answering. "You don't control the mind with more noise. You control it with silence. Look, the mind is like a river. If you stir the water with your hands, you only make it murkier. But if you let it flow, it clears up on its own. The problem is that you're fighting the current. Every time you let fear take over, you're throwing more rocks into the river. That's something I learned from the Stoics." Gaspar frowned. The Stoics? Yes, those ancient philosophers who guided their lives with reason and calmness. Back in their time, there were no antibiotics, no technology. But they taught us that if something external troubles you, it's not the thing itself that disturbs you, but your opinion about it. Gaspar, you can't control whether a surgery will be perfect, but you can control whether you torture yourself over what's already happened or accept that you did the best you could with what you knew at the time. Gaspar sat in silence. He had never thought about it that way. "Then, what do I do with the anxiety before going into surgery?" he asked. "First, accept that fear is natural. Even gladiators in the arena felt fear. The difference is that they learned not to feed it. Before stepping into surgery, instead of letting your mind wander, do what the Stoics did. Focus only on what you can control. Dr. Estrada raised a finger. What can you control? Gaspar sighed. My preparation, my concentration, my attitude. Exactly. Let go of the rest. Stop thinking, what if I had done this better? Instead, say to yourself, I did my best with what I knew at the time. And then, sleep peacefully. From that day on, the hospital remained the same. The surgeries were still complex, but that conversation marked a turning point for Gaspar. He no longer spent entire nights obsessing over every tiny detail before an operation. Now, he reviewed what was necessary and let go of the fear. There were no more moments of panic before stepping into the operating room. Now, he took a deep breath and repeated in his mind, focus only on what you can control. And even though his career remained one of the most demanding in the world, his mind was no longer a battlefield. It became his greatest ally. Now let me ask you, how many times have you felt like your mind won't give you a break? How many nights have you lost, tangled up in worries that aren't even real? Today we're going to uncover 12 Stoic principles to calm your mind and find peace, no matter what's happening around you. Before we continue, if you find this content valuable, consider subscribing and becoming an exclusive member for access to unique benefits. And let us know in the comments, what is your biggest emotional storm? What is it that keeps you from staying calm? Or simply write Stoic at heart. That way, I'll know you're one of us. Let's begin. 1. Put the brakes on your mind. Your worst enemy isn't out there in the world. It's in your own mind. You could be in the most peaceful place on the planet and still feel trapped in a whirlwind of unbearable thoughts. You could have everything in order, and yet drown in imaginary dramas. The problem isn't life, it's how you interpret it with that powerful emotion-generating machine inside your head. Think about it. How many times have you obsessed over a tiny mistake until it became a catastrophe? Think of that time you said something that later sounded ridiculous to you. No one else remembered it, but you spent the next few days replaying the scene, convinced that everyone thought it was foolish. I'll tell you a freeing truth. People are too busy thinking about their own lives to analyze every word you say. The Stoics taught us that it's not the mistakes we make that torment us, but the interpretation we give them. Our mind works like a phone full of notifications. Each thought that appears is like a new message. Some are important, but most are just noise. If every time you get a notification, you open it, analyze it, and obsess over it, you'll drive yourself crazy. But if you learn to ignore the ones that don't matter, you'll find the calm you need, and you'll stop being a slave to your own mind. Now tell me, how many of your worries really deserve all the energy you give them? Will what's distressing you so much today still matter in a month? In a year? If the answer is no, why are you giving it so much power now? Think of your mind as a fire pit. Your thoughts are the wind that feeds the flames. A small mistake, an awkward situation, or an out-of-place comment can be just a spark. But if instead of letting it die out, you blow on it, throw in more wood, and fuel the flames, you end up creating a wildfire where there was only an ember. And before you realize it, that small flame that barely gave off heat has stolen all your energy and peace. Seneca was clear. We suffer more in our imagination than in reality. So let's make this simple. Don't believe everything your mind tells you. Not every thought deserves your attention. When an obsessive thought traps you, try this. Pause. Breathe and observe the thought without reacting. It's just a thought, not a fact. Ask yourself, does this really matter? Will my life change if I keep dwelling on it? Then shift your energy into action. Instead of wasting time ruminating, use that energy for something useful. Go for a walk. Write. Do something that gets you out of that loop. And remember, it's not about silencing your mind, but about stopping yourself from falling into its game. Mental calm doesn't come when you stop thinking, but when you learn not to cling to every thought as if it were absolute truth. 2. Stop chasing what steals your peace. Sometimes the more you chase something, the further it takes you from happiness. Maybe you want more money, more recognition, more validation. And without realizing it, that constant race leaves you exhausted, unsatisfied, and far from the peace you're searching for. Because mental calm doesn't come from achieving more. It comes from letting go of what weighs you down. Look at what happens with social media. Think of someone who posts a photo, hoping for a flood of likes and comments. For a few minutes, they feel good, validated, but soon the feeling fades, and they need more. They check to see if more people have reacted, compare their numbers with others, wonder if they should have chosen a different photo. And without realizing it, what started as a search for recognition turns into a source of anxiety and frustration. Now tell me, do you really believe there will come a moment when you have enough likes, enough validation, enough success to finally feel at peace? When will it ever be enough? Spoiler, never. This is where Stoicism holds the answer. Seneca said it clearly. If you want everything to belong to you, desire nothing. And no, I'm not telling you to give up on your goals or ambitions, just to understand that if your peace depends on something external, you're trapped in a game you can never win. If your happiness depends on having more money, there will always be someone with more. If your tranquility depends on the opinions of others, you'll always be at their mercy. If your peace depends on reaching a goal, what happens afterward? How long until you find the next goal that promises you that peace that never truly arrives? It's like carrying a stone, believing it's valuable. You hold on to it tightly, take it everywhere, convinced that without it, you'll be missing something. But one day you ask yourself, why am I carrying this? Does it really add anything to my life? It only weighs me down, hurts me, exhausts me. And when you finally decide to let it go, you realize you never needed it in the first place. The problem is that we live believing the next achievement, the next goal, the next validation will give us what we're missing to feel complete. But instead of finding peace, all we do is keep running after something. Like a rabbit chasing a carrot, like a hamster on a wheel. And this is where the big question comes in. What if, instead of searching for more, you learn to be okay with what you already have? Think about it. When you were a child, you probably wanted something with all your heart. A toy, a bike, something that seemed like the most important thing in the world. You got it, and what happened? It made you happy for a while, yes, but then the desire changed, and something else appeared that promised the same happiness. The cycle repeats over and over. And that's how many people live today, chasing things that will never be enough and draining their minds in the process. Do you want to find peace? Then stop running. Try this. Pick something that makes you anxious today and let it go. Don't check social media for a day. Don't seek approval for what you do. Don't try to control what others think of you. Just one day. And observe how you feel. Because true peace doesn't come when you finally get what you're chasing. It comes when you stop running after what will never fulfill you. 3. The past no longer exists. Let it go. I know you already know this, that the past is gone and won't come back. But if I'm telling you, it's for a reason. Sometimes, even when we understand something, our mind acts differently. It suffers over what was, clings to what we can no longer change. It's normal, it's human. But let me tell you a secret, it's not mandatory. The only thing the past does is weigh you down in the present. And yet, there you are, carrying it as if that could change anything. You stay stuck in what they did to you, in what you lost, in what went wrong. And without realizing it, what happened once keeps happening over and over in your head, stealing the peace of the present. But tell me, what do you gain from that? Think about it. Maybe it's that betrayal you went through and just can't get over. You keep replaying every detail in your mind, searching for answers that don't exist. You relive the scene 1,000 times, imagining what you could have said, what you could have done differently. You even start blaming yourself for what others did. Does that make sense? Of course not. It's just the mind's obsessive game, keeping you from finding peace. The wound happened once, but you relive it every day. And that's the real problem. What hurts you the most now isn't what happened, but the pain you keep causing yourself day after day. Now tell me, what would Seneca do in your place? Here's your answer. If he suffered a betrayal, he wouldn't waste time asking, "Why did they do this to me?" or searching for justice in his mind. He would accept that life is like this, that people are unpredictable, that pain is part of the journey. And instead of dwelling on the wound, he would move forward. If he failed at something important, he wouldn't let his mind drag him into endless guilt. He wouldn't identify with the mistake. He wouldn't torture himself saying, "How foolish I was. If only I had done things differently." He would learn from what happened, apply the lesson, and keep moving. Because he knew that the past is a teacher, not a prison. But what do we do today? We get stuck. We let a bad experience define us. Let a mistake turn us into failures. Let a loss steal our peace. We stand in front of a bridge that only leads to an empty place, afraid to burn it. Because letting go of the past is scary. We cling to what was because deep down, letting it go would force us to face the present. And that's uncomfortable. But tell me, do you really want to keep walking with that weight? I challenge you to do this. Write down everything that torments you on a piece of paper, everything that's holding you back, and then burn it. Yes, burn it. Let it go like the useless bridge it is. Watch the fire consume it, and understand that the same can happen in your mind if you choose to let it go. And feel the warmth after the fire, the calm after the storm, because the past no longer exists, and the time you waste holding on to it is time you're stealing from your peace today. 4. Are you living your life or the one others expect of you? How many things in your life do you do just because they're expected of you? You chose a career because it was the logical choice. You stay in a job you hate because there are bills to pay. You accept commitments you don't want because what will they think if I say no? And just like that, without realizing it, you pile more and more weight onto your mind until the noise becomes deafening. Years ago, I met a young man named Luis. Since childhood, his family had his future all mapped out. He would be a lawyer just like his father and grandfather. It didn't matter if he was more interested in science, art, or anything else. "We are a family of lawyers," they told him. Luis didn't want to disappoint anyone, so he worked hard, got good grades, and eventually landed a job at a prestigious law firm. From the outside, everything looked like success. But inside, his mind found no peace. Every morning, as he put on his suit and looked in the mirror, he felt like he was staring at someone else. He wasn't happy. Something inside him told him he was living a borrowed life, and that mental noise grew louder and louder with every decision he made to meet others' expectations. Years later, in a conversation, he finally admitted it to me. "I don't think I ever wanted to be a lawyer." And that was the first time his mind found a little peace. He had finally allowed himself to be honest with himself. "The problem is that your mind is trapped in what everyone expects of you," I told him. "The fear of judgment, the need to fit in, the pressure not to disappoint. It's suffocating you. But what about you? What about waking up one day and feeling like you're living the life you truly want?" I asked him to reflect. And reflect he did. Something shifted inside Luis that day. Slowly, he started changing his life. He stopped measuring success through others' eyes and began asking himself what truly made him feel alive. He learned to say no without guilt, to make decisions without seeking approval, and to listen to himself before listening to anyone else. My friend, look around. The decisions you make every day, are they really yours, or are they what others expect from you? Did you choose that career because you love it, or because it was the right choice? Did you stay in that relationship because you love the person, or because it wouldn't make sense to leave now? It's like going out with friends, and everyone orders a beer, but what you really want is a coffee. And even though you don't feel like it, you end up ordering the same as them just to avoid standing out. It sounds simple, but the same thing happens with much bigger decisions. You follow the script others have written for you. Marcus Aurelius left us a lesson that fits perfectly here. Do not waste what remains of your life speculating about others unless it is to improve yourself. Because at the end of the day, no one else is going to live your life for you. When you're alone with yourself, you will be the one who has to face the consequences. What will you choose? The mental storm of knowing you're not living the life you want, or the peace and calm of feeling you're on the right path? The one you and only you have chosen to walk. Because that's the key. If you want to find peace, you need to let go of what doesn't belong to you and hold on tightly to what your soul is calling for. But how do you discover it? In a world where everyone seems to have something to say, it's easy to confuse others' desires with your own. The key is to ask yourself the uncomfortable question. If no one were judging you, would you still follow the same path? If the answer is no, then maybe that path isn't really yours. Change it. Also, pay attention to discomfort. That heaviness you feel before going to work. That lack of enthusiasm in what you do. That emptiness that nothing seems to fill. These are signs that you are living for something that doesn't fulfill you. And most importantly, start making decisions without asking for permission. Don't wait for approval before taking every step. Just move forward according to what your heart tells you. My friend, living under others' expectations is like trying to run a marathon in shoes that don't fit. Maybe you can endure for a while, but sooner or later, the pain will be so unbearable that you'll have to stop. 5. If you want calm, make room for it. You can't find tranquility if your life is pure noise. Yet there you are, waking up with your phone in hand, checking notifications before you've even had a single thought of your own. Then, the day rushes by. Obligations, screens, emails, endless tasks. And when night falls, you wonder why your mind is exhausted. The problem isn't that the world is chaotic, it's that you don't make space for calm. Think about Epictetus. He was born a slave in Rome. He had no control over his life, his time, or even his own body. His days began with orders and mistreatment and ended the same way. Maybe he woke up to the sound of his master demanding he get up instantly. Maybe he spent hours standing, serving others, listening to conversations that didn't interest him, with no right to decide what to do with his life. But do you know what? He still found peace. How is that possible? A mistreated slave, someone who had no say in what he did, when, or how, was able to remain calm and find inner peace every single day. Ah, yes, my friend, that is the magic of Stoicism. Epictetus focused on the only thing that truly belonged to him, his mind. Whenever he could, he would step away from the noise and close his eyes to reflect. It didn't matter how exhausting his day was, who was yelling at him, whether he was locked up or sleeping on the floor. He always found a moment to connect with himself. Inspiring, isn't it? Now tell me, if someone who was a slave could find ways to make space for peace, what's your excuse? The social media you just can't stop checking? The job that drains you? The kids who don't give you a second of free time? Don't get me wrong. I know all those things are real and important. I'm not saying you don't have responsibilities or that it's easy. I just want you to realize that no matter the situation, it's possible to find peace. The difference is whether you choose to or whether you keep letting the noise sweep you away. Think of a messy room filled with things scattered on the floor. Clothes piled on chairs, papers spread everywhere, objects stacked in every corner. You try to move, but you trip over everything. You feel like there's no space to breathe, like every step is uncomfortable. Now imagine that instead of a room, it's your mind that looks like this. When your day is overloaded with stimuli, when you don't give yourself a break, not even a single minute to be alone with yourself, it's like living in that cluttered room. Every notification, every worry, every unfinished task is another object thrown on the floor. And your peace of mind? It's trying to find its way through all that mess. But there's no space. Not because calm isn't possible, but because you haven't made room for it. So, like Epictetus, start making space for calm. Start your day without external noise. Instead of grabbing your phone the moment you wake up, give yourself 10 minutes without screens. Observe how you feel. What thoughts come up without interference? Epictetus didn't have distractions from technology. His reality was much harsher, yet he still found a way to begin his day in peace. Find a moment for absolute silence. It doesn't have to be an hour of meditation, just 5 minutes of real disconnection. Epictetus found these moments at night, locked away. You can find 5 minutes too. It's just a matter of commitment. Clear out what you don't need. Just like a room filled with unnecessary objects, your mind needs space. Ask yourself, how many useless thoughts, unnecessary worries, and distractions are taking up space in my head? Do a mental cleanup. Epictetus did it by letting go of attachments to things he couldn't control. You can do the same, because peace doesn't appear magically. It's something you build day by choosing to make space for it. 6. What you own owns you. Have you ever heard of the rat race? No, I'm not talking about an actual race where rats compete to be the fastest. I'm talking about the trap we all fall into when we believe that having more will make us happier. The famous, when I have more money, a bigger house, the car I've always wanted, then finally I'll be happy. I'll live peacefully and stress-free. Let me say this as clearly as I can. What a massive lie. And the worst part? For a moment it seems to work. But that feeling never lasts. Because the more you have, the more you worry about losing it. The peace you expected to find turns into anxiety. Think about the last time you saved up for something you really wanted. Maybe it was that car you dreamed of for years. At first you loved it, but little by little you started worrying more about protecting it than enjoying it. You parked far away to avoid scratches, got nervous every time someone touched it, even avoided certain routes to keep it from getting dirty. The thing you bought to make you feel better ended up stealing your peace. Ironic, isn't it? The same thing happens with everything material. You think you're gaining something, but what you're really gaining is a new source of stress. Epictetus made it clear centuries ago. The rich man is not the one who has the most, but the one who needs the least. Because, my friend, believe me, calm isn't found in accumulating more, but in learning to need less. It's like being chained with golden shackles. They shine, they catch attention, they seem like a symbol of success. But at the end of the day, they're still chains. Ties that keep you living in fear. Fear of losing what you have. Fear of someone taking it from you. Fear that it will never be enough. And that will never allow you to be at peace. If you truly want calm, start breaking free from this illusion today. It's not about giving up everything, it's about not clinging to it. It's about not letting the fear of losing what you have steal your peace. Here are some lessons from the Stoics. They would deliberately go through periods of living without their possessions, without food, without hot water, without shelter. And no, it wasn't some act of self-punishment. It was a way to remind themselves that they could live with the bare minimum. Now, I'm not asking you to sleep under a bridge, but you can start with something small. Go a day without something you think is essential. Maybe your phone, maybe that object you value so much, or even the urge to buy something new. Observe whether you actually need it or if you've just created a false dependency. Another useful trick: question every purchase. Before you buy something new, ask yourself, do I really need this? Or is it just another trap in the rat race? And finally, train your mind to understand that you don't need more. Repeat this idea. My happiness doesn't depend on what I have, but on who I am. Because real freedom isn't measured by what you own. It's measured by how much you can let go without fear. If you keep holding on to the belief that material things will bring you peace, you're only building a golden prison. It may look nice from the outside, but it's still a prison. And the door is open, you just have to decide to walk out. 7. Don't fight, accept. There are things that, no matter how much you want, don't depend on you. And yes, I know you already know this. It's the ultimate Stoic mantra. But do you really accept it when life takes something away that you can't get back? How much time have you wasted fighting the inevitable? How many times have you resisted accepting a reality that, painful as it may be, you couldn't change? I'll be honest with you, I've been there too. A long time ago, I went through a situation I simply couldn't accept. Someone who had been by my side decided to walk away, and instead of facing it, I spent weeks, months, trying to make sense of it, searching for reasons, replaying everything over and over again. I told myself that if I did something different, maybe things would change, that if I found the right way to explain myself, everything would go back to how it was before. But it didn't. That constant struggle only hurt me. I couldn't sleep. My mind was stuck in a loop of, what if I had done this? What if I try this instead? Until one day, I realized something obvious. Nothing I did would change that person's decision. It simply wasn't up to me. And yet, there I was, draining myself over something beyond my control. That's when I truly understood Epictetus's lesson. Do your best with what is within your control and accept the rest as it comes. Because true peace doesn't come from trying to control the uncontrollable. It comes from learning to let go. Like a tree in autumn that doesn't cling to its leaves when the cold wind arrives. It doesn't fight. It simply lets them fall. And when spring comes, it blooms again. Learning this changed me completely. I no longer fight what I can't change. Now, when life puts me in a difficult situation, instead of reacting with frustration, I ask myself one question. Is this within my control? If the answer is yes, I act. If the answer is no, I let it go. It sounds simple, but when you apply it, everything changes. You stop exhausting yourself over things that aren't up to you. You find peace in acceptance. What about you? Have you ever held on to something that had no solution? Maybe you got stuck in an endless argument, trying to convince someone who simply didn't want to listen. Or maybe you keep thinking about an opportunity you lost, punishing yourself over and over for what you didn't do at the time. Or you're still reliving an old offense, as if going over it again and again could make it disappear. The question is, what has that done for you? Has it brought you peace? Has it helped in any way? Or has it just been unnecessary weight you keep carrying without realizing it? Tell us in the comments, what is the hardest thing for you to accept in your life? Share it and ask yourself, would letting go help you? Because often just by saying it out loud, you realize the fight is pointless. And when you stop fighting reality, you can finally start living in peace. 8. Turn off the outside noise. We live in an era where information bombards us the moment we open our eyes. There was a time when the first sound of the day was birds singing or the hum of the coffee machine. Now it's a notification on your phone, a message that seems urgent but is just a meme, an email reminding you of a task already on your calendar, the latest photo from your favorite influencer. You've barely woken up, and your brain is already overloaded with stimuli. Your mind isn't even fully awake yet, and it's already being invaded. And without realizing it, you go from one short video to another, from one alarming news headline to a meaningless debate, letting the world's noise dictate your mental state. The documentary, The Social Dilemma, exposes something we've all noticed. Social media is designed to trap us. It doesn't show you what you need to see, but what will keep you there the longest. Have you ever gone online to check something quickly and found yourself an hour later wondering where the time went? It's no accident. It's the algorithm. It knows you better than you know yourself. It knows exactly what to show you so you won't leave. But the worst part isn't the time you lose. It's what happens to your mind. Psychological studies have analyzed the impact of this constant overstimulation. Every time we get a notification, our brain releases dopamine, that pleasure chemical that makes us crave more. It's the same system that drives addiction to gambling or sugar. And here's the uncomfortable question. Do you really decide when to check social media? Or are you just reacting to what your phone demands? How many times have you felt the urge to check something for no reason, just because your brain tells you to? Think about that for a second. It's terrifying. If you can't even control when you look at your own device, how do you expect to control your peace of mind? Seneca said it centuries ago, long before social media existed. It is more important what you choose to ignore than what you choose to learn. Imagine your mind as a crystal clear river. Every notification, every scandal on social media, every pointless argument you read is like trash being thrown into the water. At first, it's just a floating can, then a plastic bag, then more and more waste, until the water becomes murky and completely polluted. If you want mental clarity, start filtering what you allow in. Here are 3 ways to take back control of your attention and your mind. First, set limits on the noise. Instead of being glued to your phone all day, decide when you'll check social media and the news. If you don't have control over that, then you're not using them. They're using you. Second, turn off unnecessary notifications. Do you really need every app interrupting you every few minutes? Fewer interruptions, more calm. And the most powerful thing you can do, replace the noise with something that adds value. Don't let your first stimulus of the day be your phone. Try starting with a moment of silence, a book, a coffee without distractions. Trust me, the difference will be huge. My friend, the information will always be there. The world will keep shouting. Social media will still be full of memes tomorrow. But you decide whether to let that noise drag you along or to take control and find your own peace. 9. Happiness is not where you think. If you believe happiness is in the next achievement, get ready to be chasing it forever. That promotion, that new car, that bigger house. And what happens when you finally get it? Let me reveal the truth. The excitement lasts just a moment, and suddenly you're already looking for the next goal. It's like running on a hamster wheel. You keep moving, but you never actually get anywhere. Psychologists call this the happiness paradox. Professor Sam Maglio from the University of Toronto explains that constantly striving to be happy is actually counterproductive. It's exhausting. It weakens our self-control and drains our willpower. In other words, the more you chase happiness, the more it slips away. Ironic, isn't it? Happiness is best achieved when pursued indirectly. It is a side effect of living with purpose and gratitude, said Maglio. The problem is that we chase society's idea of success without asking ourselves what truly fulfills us. That's how we fall into the trap of working tirelessly toward a goal that, in the end, leaves us feeling just as empty as when we started. And what do our Stoic friends say about this? Marcus Aurelius put it simply, "If you seek happiness in external things, you will always be their slave." End of story. He was more direct than modern psychologists, but just as accurate. What does this mean? If your happiness depends on a promotion, a relationship, or the approval of others, you will never be free. You will always be chained to what you cannot control. Think of it this way. It's like trying to catch your own shadow. You run after it with all your might. It feels like you're just about to reach it. But no matter how fast you go, it always stays one step ahead. That's the trap of searching for happiness in external things. It never arrives. And worse, it fills you with anxiety, frustration, and steals your peace. So how do you break this cycle? How do you stop seeking happiness in external things and find real calm? Here are 3 Stoic keys to achieving it. The first trick is to make happiness depend on you. Epictetus put it perfectly. Happiness and freedom begin with the clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within our control, and others are not. What is in your control? Your attitude, your gratitude, the way you live in the present. Nothing else. Shift your focus from acquiring to appreciating. Ask yourself, do you really need more to be happy? Or do you just need to learn to value what you already have? Think of this saying, whoever does not appreciate a single flower will not appreciate a bouquet. If you can't find joy in the small things, you won't find it in the big things either. And the hardest thing to do in today's world, slow down. The noise around you makes you believe you always need to be chasing the next goal. But peace isn't about having the most followers, the most money, or the most external success. Peace is in stopping, breathing, and realizing that you don't need to rush. You're already where you need to be. You just have to see it. Listen to what Seneca said. No one is poor who is satisfied with what they have. So stop chasing shadows and start living in the light of the present. Happiness isn't in the next success nor in the next achievement. It's in every moment you choose to stop, look around, and realize that you already have everything you need to be at peace. 10. Peace is not found, it is built. Many people think that inner peace is something that just appears one day, that taking a couple of days off and traveling somewhere quiet will be enough to leave their problems behind. But let me tell you a well-known secret. Peace is not a button you press to make everything calm down, nor a destination you reach where your mind and body suddenly feel lighter. It doesn't work that way. Peace is something you build every single day. Imagine your mind as a house. If you never clean it, if you don't repaint it or fix the leaks, what do you think will happen? It will become unlivable. But if you take the time to maintain it, it will be a refuge for life. Your inner peace works the same way. It's not something external that will arrive when you have more money, when you reach this year's big goal, or when life finally becomes perfect. Because tell me, how many times have you thought you would finally be at peace once you achieved something, only to realize that your mind was still restless? My friend, peace comes when you stop searching for it and start doing something about it. You've surely experienced this before. You rush through your day running from one thing to another. You tell yourself that once you finish work, once you get home, once you finally sit on the couch, you'll be calm. But when you get there, your mind is still racing. You check your phone, scroll through social media, turn on the TV without really watching. You expected peace to come on its own, but it didn't. And that's where the mistake lies. Calm doesn't come just because you finished something. It comes when you actively make space for it. Think of a pot of boiling water. If you keep turning up the heat, if you keep stirring aggressively, it will never settle. But if you turn off the heat and let it sit, the water will naturally return to stillness. Peace works the same way. It's not about forcing it, it's about stopping the things that fuel the chaos. Seneca understood this well. He who is always busy has no time to be free. And what is peace, if not a form of freedom? I know it's hard, life is overwhelming, and we all rush around like headless chickens. But believe me, it's possible. And here's how. Start by filtering what enters your mind. Just as you wouldn't leave trash in your home. Why do you allow the world's noise to clutter your thoughts? Peace is built by consciously choosing where to focus your attention. Learn to be alone with your thoughts. Many people avoid silence because it makes them uncomfortable. But if you can't be at peace with yourself, how do you expect to find tranquility in the world? And here's the key. Change how you respond to life. You can't stop problems from happening, but you can stop them from controlling you. Epictetus said it best. It's not what happens to us that affects us, but how we interpret what happens to us. Peace is not a gift from fate. It's the result of what you do every day. If you don't cultivate it, it won't appear on its own. Don't wait for it, build it. And now that you know peace doesn't just magically show up, let me reveal one final secret. Too many people spend their lives waiting for someone or something to give them the tranquility, happiness, and security they long for. But, my friend, that's never going to happen. Stay with me just a little longer, and I'll tell you why. 11. Everything you need is already within you. We've been led to believe that we're always missing something to be complete, that we need more knowledge, more relationships, more wealth. But listen closely. The truth is, you don't need anything outside of yourself to find the peace you long for. Think of a tree. It doesn't need to grow new leaves every morning to be a tree. It doesn't need fresh branches every day to have value. It simply is. And so are you. You already have everything you need inside you. But if you spend your life searching for it elsewhere, you'll never realize it. Do you really think that all those successful people you admire have it all figured out? That because they've reached the top, they now live in peace, without doubts, without emptiness? Do you believe happiness arrives with a trophy, a full bank account, or public recognition, like a verified check on social media? Of course not. Look at what happens to many of those figures who seem to have it all. Elite athletes who, after winning their biggest prize, fall into depression because they no longer have a greater goal to chase. Actors and musicians who, despite all the fame and money in the world, feel lonelier than ever. Entrepreneurs who have built empires but still feel like it's never enough. Why? Because everything they've searched for externally was never going to fill what was missing inside. Marcus Aurelius put it simply, look within yourself. There is the source of good, and it will flow endlessly if you keep seeking it within. And I tell you this because I went through it too. There was a time when I believed my success depended on external factors. I told myself that once I achieved X goal, I would finally be satisfied. That once I reached my next milestone, I would feel fulfilled. I was constantly waiting, convinced that the next step held the answer. But then, at some point, I realized the obvious. None of those things would change what was happening inside me. If I kept placing my peace in things outside my control, I would never truly have it. That's when I stopped searching externally. I no longer sought validation through work, relationships, or money. Do you know what I did? I started valuing and trusting what I already had inside, my values, my goodwill, what I could offer to others. And do you know how I felt? My friend, words cannot describe the peace I found. My mindset changed, and with it, everything else changed too. But I won't lie to you, it wasn't an easy path, but it was one worth walking. How did I do it? Let me share my secrets so you can do the same. First, I stopped waiting for external validation. I understood that if everything I did depended on others' opinions, I would never truly be free. Second, I learned to trust myself. I stopped measuring my worth by what I owned or achieved, and instead I turned inward to cultivate my values, my passions, and my hidden talents. And third, I started dedicating time to myself. Because the only way to discover that you already have everything you need is to give yourself space to feel it and realize it's all within you. Listen to the powerful lesson Seneca left us. He who worries about how much he owns is always poor. Ah, what wisdom, my friend. Because the key has never been in what you acquire. It has always been in who you are. And the sooner you understand this, the sooner you will find the peace you've been chasing for so long. My friend, finding calm is not a luxury. It's a human necessity. If you don't take control of your mind, the noise of the world will do it for you. Stop waiting for the perfect moment to find peace, because peace is not something you find. It's something you build. Every day is a new opportunity to clear out what's unnecessary, to make silence your refuge, to strengthen your mind with every decision you make. It's not about running away from chaos. It's about learning to be immune to it. Because life doesn't reward those who just think about it. It rewards those who take action. If you've made it this far, write in the comments, I build my peace every day. That way, I'll know who the true Stoic warriors are who made it to the end. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and give this video a like so you don't miss out on what's coming next. I also invite you to check out our playlist, which you'll see on the screen. It's packed with ideas, stories, and advice to help you navigate life with more wisdom and confidence. Click it, and let's keep moving forward together. Until next time, take care and keep embracing your inner Stoic.